The space station floated above a frozen world. Inside, 47 aliens stood in a large white room. They came from different planets. They had different bodies. Some had fur. Some had scales. Some had hard shells like insects. But they all wanted the same thing. They wanted to pass the test. Park Doin stood alone in the corner. He was the only human. He was 28 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. Back on Earth, he worked in the Arctic. He studied ice. He built shelters in frozen places. But here, surrounded by aliens twice his size, he felt very small. The Galactic Federation held this test every year. They called it the survival evaluation. The rules were simple. They would drop all candidates on a dangerous planet. The candidates had to survive for 14 days. No help, no rescue. If you lived, you passed. If you died, you failed. High Arbiter Vaughn walked to the front of the room. He was a Polari, and his body was made of living crystal. Light moved inside him like fire in glass. When he spoke, his voice was cold and flat. "This cycle, you will survive on Keth 7, he said. "It is an ice world. Day temperatures reach -60 degrees. Night temperatures fall to -120 degrees. You will receive basic supplies. Nothing more." The aliens in the room began to whisper. Some looked worried. Others looked confident. A tall creature, covered in white fur, laughed quietly. Her name was Keth, and her species was called the Breath. They lived on cold planets. She thought this test would be easy. Near her stood Tora, a Mora warrior. The Mora looked like giant insects. They had hard shells and many eyes. Tora had fought in 3 wars. She was not afraid of anything, but when Tora looked at the human, she felt something close to pity. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had soft skin. They needed warmth to live. Everyone knew they would not survive cold like this. "The human will die first," Tora said to Keth. "Maybe in the first night." Keth looked at Doyan. He stood quietly, not talking to anyone. He did not look scared. He did not look brave. He just looked like he was thinking. "Perhaps," Keth said. "But there is something strange about him. He does not seem worried." On the other side of the room, 3 Kelani stood together. They had green scales and long tails. Their bodies were made for warm jungles, not frozen ice. They knew this test would be hard for them. But they had pride. They would not show fear. High Arbiter Vaughn raised his crystal hand. "You will be dropped at different locations across the planet. You will have no communication with each other or with us. Observation drones will watch you. Do not try to destroy them." He paused. His light flickered. 23 candidates died in last year's evaluation, he said. "Try not to add to that number." The aliens began to move toward the transport ships. Dong walked slowly, checking his small bag of supplies. He had a thermal suit, a fire-starting kit, a knife, water tablets, and emergency food for 3 days. It was not much, but he had survived with less. Before he reached the ship, a voice spoke in his ear. It was his earpiece, still connected to the orbital station for a few more minutes. The voice belonged to Yoon Ji-yeon, his mission coordinator. She was back on the human ship, watching everything. "Dohyun," she said quietly. "Are you ready?" "No," he said honestly. "But I will manage. The other species think you will die first. The betting pools give you 12 hours. Dohyun almost smiled. "Then I will have to disappoint them." "Remember your training," Jian said. "You studied ice your whole life. You know cold better than any of them. They have fur and scales and shells, but you have something better." "What?" 10,000 years of ancestors who refused to freeze to death. The earpiece crackled. Communications were being cut. In a few seconds, he would be alone. Do-hyun Jian said quickly. You are not just surviving for yourself. You are surviving for all of us. For Earth, show them what humans can do. Then there was silence. Do-hyun boarded the transport ship. He sat next to a Polari, who looked at him with what might have been curiosity. The crystalline alien's body made soft ringing sounds as the ship began to shake. Human, the Polari said. I am called Ven. I do not expect you to survive. But I hope you prove me wrong. Do-hyun nodded. Thank you. I hope the same for you. The ship dropped through clouds of ice and wind. Through the small window, Do-hyun could see Keth 7 growing larger. It was white and gray and endless. There were no trees, no buildings, no life, just ice and rock and cold. One by one, the candidates were dropped at different locations. When Do-hyun's turn came, the door opened and freezing air hit him like a wall. His thermal suit activated, but he could still feel the cold pressing against his skin. He stepped out onto the ice. The ship flew away, and then he was alone. The wind screamed around him. Ice particles hit his face like tiny knives. The temperature was already negative 50 degrees, and the sun was still up. When night came, it would be much worse. Any other person might have panicked. Any other person might have cried or screamed or given up. But Do-hyun just stood there, breathing slowly, letting his body adjust. Then he started to walk. He did not run. He did not search for shelter. He walked slowly, studying the ground, feeling the wind, looking at the snow. He was not just surviving. He was learning. He was planning. Somewhere far away, the observation drones watched. On the orbital station, the council members looked at their screens. They expected the human to die. They were wrong. Do-hyun walked for 6 hours. His legs hurt. His face was numb. But he did not stop. He was looking for something that most of the other candidates had already found shelter. Tora, the Mora warrior, had discovered a deep ice cave. She sat inside, her hard shell protecting her from the wind. She thought she was smart. She thought she would survive easily. Keth, the breath with white fur, had found a crack in a tall rock formation. She pressed her body into the narrow space, using her thick fur to stay warm. Her species lived on cold planets. She was confident, but Do-hyun did not look for caves or cracks. He looked at the ground. He tested the snow with his feet. He watched how the wind moved across the ice. He was searching for something specific. Finally, he found it. It was a small depression in the ground, near a crack in the ice where warm air rose from below. A geothermal vent. The heat was weak, barely noticeable, but it was there. More importantly, the snow here was deep and packed tightly. Do-hyun stopped walking. He took off his gloves for just a moment, feeling the snow with his bare hands. It was the right kind. Dense, solid, perfect for building. He started to dig. The observation drones flew closer. On the orbital station, a Polari scientist watched with confusion. What is the human doing? She asked. He is digging a hole. Does he want to bury himself? High Arbiter Vaughn watched silently. He did not understand either, but he was curious. Do-hyun dug for 3 hours. He did not dig straight down. He dug at an angle, creating a tunnel that went down and then up again. This was important. Cold air sinks. Warm air rises. If he made the entrance lower than the sleeping area, the cold air would stay in the tunnel while the warm air stayed with him. His ancestors had learned this thousands of years ago. They had no science. They had no technology. But they had watched and learned and survived. Now, Do-hyun used their knowledge. When the tunnel was done, he began to hollow out a small room at the end. He worked carefully, making the walls smooth, the ceiling round. A flat ceiling would drip water when his body heat melted the snow. A round ceiling would make the water run down the sides. By the time darkness began to fall, Do-hyun had built a quinji. It was a snow shelter, small and simple, but perfectly designed. He crawled inside and blocked the entrance with a pack of snow. Inside, the temperature was -5 degrees. Outside, it was falling toward -100. He was not comfortable. He was still cold, but he would not die. As the night grew darker, the death count began. The 3 Kelani were the first to die. Their scaled bodies could not hold heat. Their thermal suits failed. They fell asleep and never woke up. The observation drones recorded their final moments with cold efficiency. 2 more died next. They had trusted their hard shells to protect them, but the extreme cold made their shells brittle. When they moved, their bodies cracked like glass. They died screaming, though no one could hear them in the frozen wind. In her ice cave, Tora heard nothing, but she felt fear for the first time. The cold was worse than she had expected. Much worse. Her shell was strong, but she could feel it getting stiff. If she moved too much, she might crack too. Kath pressed herself deeper into her rock crack. Her fur was thick, but something was wrong. Moisture from her breath had frozen on her fur. Ice was building up. Wet fur did not keep heat. Wet fur killed. She did not sleep that night. She was too afraid. But in his snow shelter, Do-hyun slept. Not well, not deeply, but he slept. His body temperature dropped, but not enough to kill him. His shelter worked. When morning came, he crawled out and counted the observation drones. Some were flying toward distant locations. He knew what that meant. Some candidates had died. He felt sad, but he did not stop working. Today, he would make his shelter better. He searched the area for anything useful. Under the deep snow, he found old plants. They were frozen and dry, but they would burn. He collected them carefully, filling his pockets and his bag. Near the geothermal vent, he found stones that were slightly warm. They had absorbed heat from below. He could use them. By midday, Do-hyun had done something that no other candidate thought possible. He had made a fire. It was small. It was weak. It made more smoke than heat, but it was fire. On a planet of ice, in temperatures that could freeze blood, a human had created fire. The observation drones recorded everything. On the orbital station, the council members watched in silence. How is this possible? The Polari scientist asked. He has no advanced tools. He has nothing. High Arbiter Vaughn's crystal body flickered with strange colors. He has knowledge, he said slowly. Very old knowledge. Do-hyun used the fire to heat stones. He carried the hot stones into his shelter. He placed them in a circle around his sleeping area. They would release heat slowly through the night. He also built a small chimney in the roof of his quinji. The smoke could escape, but most of the heat would stay inside. His ancestors had used this design for thousands of years. It worked then. It worked now. As the second night approached, the temperature dropped again. More candidates died. A Polari whose crystal body shattered in the cold. 2 more Mora who had tried to walk to a better location. A small creature with 6 legs, whose species Do-hyun did not know. By the end of the second day, 35 candidates remained. In her rock crack, Kath watched the horizon. She was hungry and cold and scared. Her fur was covered in ice. She knew she would not survive many more nights like this. Then she saw something strange. A thin line of smoke rising from the snow in the distance. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant heat. Heat meant life. Kath began to walk toward it. She did not know that the smoke came from a human. She did not know that the creature everyone expected to die first was the only one who truly knew how to live. She only knew that she was cold, and somewhere out there, something was warm. Kath walked for half a day before she found him. Her paws were frostbitten. Her beautiful white fur was gray with ice. Every step hurt, but she kept walking toward the smoke. When she finally saw the humans' camp, she stopped. She could not believe what she was seeing. Doyen had built walls of snow around his shelter. He had created a small fire pit with stones. Smoke rose from a hole in the snow mound. It looked like something from an ancient time, from a world that had never seen starships or space stations. It looked like survival. Doyun saw her coming. He did not run. He did not hide. He stood up and waited. Kath approached slowly. Her translator crackled in the cold. "Human," she said. Her voice was weak. "How are you doing this?" Dohyun looked at her. He saw the ice on her fur. He saw the pain in her eyes. He saw someone who was dying. "Your fur is wet," he said simply. "Wet fur does not keep you warm. It makes you colder. It will kill you." Kath looked down at herself. She had not understood this. On her home planet, the cold was never this extreme. Her fur had always been enough. "What can I do?" she asked. Doyun walked toward her. He moved slowly, carefully, like approaching a scared animal. "May I touch you?" he asked. Kath hesitated. Her species did not like to be touched by strangers. But she was dying. She nodded. Dohyun used his hands to brush the ice from her fur. He worked gently, section by section, removing the frozen moisture. It took a long time. His hands grew cold and numb. But he did not stop. "You need to keep your fur dry," he explained while he worked. "Brush the ice away before you sleep. Shake yourself when you wake up. And stay out of the wind. Wind steals heat faster than anything." Kath felt warmth returning to her body. Not much, but enough. The human's hands were rough and cold, but his touch was kind. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "We are competitors. If I die, you have a better chance of winning." Dahan stopped brushing for a moment. He looked at her with tired eyes. "Where I come from," he said, "we have a saying. A problem shared is a problem halved. My ancestors survived ice ages. They survived frozen mountains and endless winters. They did not do it alone. They survived together." He went back to brushing her fur. "I do not want to win by watching others die," he said quietly. "That is not survival. That is just being the last one to lose." Kath did not know what to say. In her culture, competition was everything. The strong survived. The weak died. That was the natural way, but this human was not weak. He had built fire from nothing. He had created shelter from snow. He was surviving better than anyone else. And yet he was helping her dad. It did not make sense. But it felt right. "Thank you," Kath said finally. Doyun nodded. "Come, I will show you how to build a snow wall. It will block the wind and keep you warmer at night." He taught her for hours. He showed her how to pack snow into solid blocks. He showed her how to stack them in a curved shape that pushed wind away. He showed her how to dig a small pit and cover it with blocks to create a shelter. It was simple knowledge. Ancient knowledge. But Kath had never seen anything like it. When night came, she stayed near Doyun's camp. She built her own small shelter using his techniques. It was not as good as his, but it was better than the rock crack. Much better. She survived the night. By day 4, more candidates had died. Only 23 remained. The observation drones flew back and forth across the frozen landscape, recording death after death. But something strange was happening. Word was spreading among the survivors. The human had fire. The human had shelter. The human was helping others. Tora, the moral warrior, heard about it from a dying candidate who stumbled past her ice cave. The candidate, a small creature with blue skin, had seen the smoke before collapsing from the cold. Go north, the creature whispered. Find the human. He knows how to live. Then the creature died. Tora sat in her cave, thinking. Her pride told her to stay. She was a warrior. She had fought in 3 wars. She did not need help from a soft, weak human. But her body told her something different. Her shell was cracking. The cold was getting inside. She would not survive many more nights. On day 5, Tora left her cave and walked north. She found Do-Yoon's camp on day 6. By then, it had grown. Keth was there, her fur clean and dry now. Another alien was there too, a wounded Palari named Ven whose crystal body was full of cracks. Do-Yoon was teaching Ven how to wrap hot stones in dried plants to create a slow-release heat pack. The Palari listened carefully, his cracked body flickering with weak light. Tara stopped at the edge of the camp. Her pride screamed at her to turn back, but her body would not move. Do-Yoon looked up and saw her. He saw the cracks in her shell. He saw the frost on her joints. He saw another person who was dying. Welcome, he said simply. Come sit by the fire. You must be cold. Tora's mandibles clicked. I do not need help from a human. Maybe not, Do-Yoon said, but I'm offering it anyway. He turned back to Ven, continuing his lesson. He did not beg. He did not argue. He simply left the offer open. Tora stood in the cold wind for a long time. She thought about her pride. She thought about her wars. She thought about all the time she had been strong and alone. Then she thought about dying alone in an ice cave. Her shell cracking, her body freezing, with no one to remember her. She walked forward and sat by the fire. Do-Yoon smiled. He handed her a warm stone wrapped in dried plants. Hold this against your chest, he said. It will help with the cracks. Tomorrow, I will show you how to make a paste from ice and dust that will seal them. Tora took the stone. It was warm. It felt like life. Why? She asked, her voice rough. Why do you help us? Do-Yoon looked at her, then at Keth, then at Ven. 3 aliens who had thought humans were weak. 3 aliens who were now alive because of him. Because, he said, survival means nothing if you are alone at the end. That night, 4 people slept around a human fire on a frozen hell world. Outside, the temperature dropped to -130 degrees. Inside the camp, surrounded by snow walls and heated stones, they were cold but alive. The observation drones recorded everything. On the orbital station, High Arbiter Vaughn watched in silence. He had lived for 300 years. He had seen thousands of survival evaluations. He had never seen anything like this. The human was not just surviving. He was building something. A community. A family. He was doing something the Federation had forgotten was possible. He was saving everyone. Day 9 began like any other day on Keth 7. Cold, gray, quiet. But Do-Yoon knew something was wrong. He had been watching the sky for days. Back on Earth, he had studied weather patterns in the Arctic. He had learned to read clouds, to feel changes in the air, to sense storms before they came. And now, his body was telling him that something bad was coming. The clouds were moving strangely. The wind was shifting. The temperature, which had been stable for days, was starting to drop faster than normal. A storm is coming, Do-Yoon said to the others. A big one. Keth looked at the sky. She saw nothing unusual. How do you know? I can feel it, Do-Yoon said. The air pressure is changing. The wind is moving in circles. This is going to be worse than anything we have seen. By now, the camp had grown. 14 survivors lived there. Some had walked for days to find it. Others had been carried by those who found them dying in the ice. Do-Yoon had turned no one away. Gren, an elderly Morris scholar, had arrived on day 7. His shell was old and thin, and the cold had nearly killed him. Do-hyun had treated him with hot stones and kept him warm through 2 nights. How bad will the storm be? Gren asked. Do-hyun shook his head. I do not know exactly, but we need to prepare for the worst. We need to make the shelter bigger, stronger. We need more heat sources, more food, more everything. For 3 days, the group worked without rest. Do-hyun directed them, but everyone helped. Keth carried snow blocks. Tora, her shell now sealed with the paste Do-hyun had made, dug tunnels. Van, the Polari, used his crystalline body to cut ice into precise shapes. They built an inner chamber inside the main shelter. They made the walls thicker. They created a ventilation system with multiple chimneys so smoke could escape, but heat could not. They gathered every piece of dry plant material they could find. They heated hundreds of stones. On the night of day 8, Do-hyun did not sleep. He sat outside, watching the sky, waiting. The storm hit at dawn on day 9. It came without warning. One moment, the air was still. The next moment, the world was screaming. Wind tore across the ice at speeds Do-hyun had never experienced. The temperature dropped so fast that his thermal suit alarms began to flash. -150 degrees. -160. -180. Everyone inside. Do-hyun shouted, now. The 14 survivors crowded into the inner chamber. It was small. It was cramped. But it was warm. The walls held. The heat stayed. Outside, the storm raged like a living thing. Ice particles flew so fast they could cut through metal. The wind sounded like 1,000 voices screaming in anger. The cold was beyond anything any of them had ever felt. 3 more candidates died that day. They were survivors who had refused to join Do-hyun's camp. They had stayed alone, trusting their own strength, believing they did not need help from a human. The storm froze them in seconds. Inside the shelter, the group waited. Hours passed. The storm did not stop. Do-hyun moved constantly, checking the walls, checking the ventilation, checking the fire. He added heated stones to the center of the chamber. He adjusted the smoke holes when they got blocked by ice. He did not sleep. He could not sleep. If the shelter failed, everyone would die. Human, Tora said after 20 hours. You must rest. You will die from exhaustion. Do-hyun shook his head. If I rest, I might miss something. A crack in the wall. A blocked chimney. A fire going out. I cannot take that risk. Then let me watch, Tora said. Let me help. Do-hyun looked at her. The proud warrior who had refused to ask for help. The Mora who had thought humans were weak. She was offering to share his burden. Do you know what to look for? He asked. Teach me. So Do-hyun taught her. He showed her how to check the walls for cracks. He showed her how to listen for changes in the wind that might mean a chimney was blocked. He showed her how to feel the air for signs of carbon dioxide buildup. Then he slept for 4 hours, while Tora kept watch. When he woke, the storm was still raging. But everyone was still alive. Kath moved closer to him. Human, she said quietly. Why do you do this? Your species gains nothing from our survival. If we die, there are fewer competitors for your people. Politically, economically, you benefit from our deaths. Do-hyun thought about this for a long moment. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, 14 lives hung on his answer. My grandmother survived a war, he said finally. A terrible war where millions of people died. She was just a child. She had nothing. No food, no shelter, no family. He paused, remembering stories from his childhood. One night, a stranger found her in the ruins of a city. The stranger had very little food, but he shared half of it with her. He had a small fire, but he let her sit beside it. He could have kept everything for himself, He could have survived longer alone, but he chose to share. Do-hyun looked around the shelter at the aliens who were listening. My grandmother lived because of that stranger. She grew up. She had children. Her children had children. I exist because one person, thousands of years ago, chose to share his warmth with a stranger. He smiled sadly. She told me something before I left Earth. She said, "When the world is coldest, warmth must be shared. Survival is not about being the last one standing. It is about making sure others can stand too." The shelter was silent. Outside, the storm continued. Inside, something had changed. Then, the Polari spoke first. His cracked crystalline body flickered with soft light. "I have lived for 90 years. I have studied many species. I thought I understood humans. I was wrong." Gren, the old Morris scholar, clicked his mandibles. "The Federation tests for individual worth, strength, resilience, adaptability. But perhaps we have been measuring the wrong things." Keth nodded slowly. "Perhaps true strength is not about surviving alone. Perhaps it is about helping others survive." Do-hyun said nothing. He just checked the fire and added another heated stone. The storm lasted for 2 more days. When it finally ended on day 11, Do-hyun crawled out of the shelter and looked at the sky. It was clear and cold and beautiful dot behind him. 13 other survivors emerged from the snow. They were tired. They were hungry. They were cold. But they were alive. All of them. Every single one. Do-hyun counted the observation drones in the sky. Some were flying to distant locations. He knew what that meant. Others had died in the storm, but not here. Not in his camp. 3 more days, he said quietly. 3 more days, and this is over. Tora stood beside him. Her shell was scarred now, marked by the pace that had saved her life. But her eyes were different, softer, kinder. "Whatever happens," she said, "I will remember this. I will tell my people what humans can do, what they truly are." Dawn nodded. "Thank you." "No," Tora said. "Thank you." They stood together in the frozen morning. 2 species that had never understood each other, united by fire and ice and the simple truth that survival meant nothing without someone to share it with. Day 14. The last day. Do-hyun stood outside the shelter and watched the sky. Somewhere up there, rescue ships were preparing to descend. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Federation was deciding the fate of every survivor. The camp was quiet. The 14 survivors sat together, waiting. They had fought the cold for 2 weeks. They had faced death every night. They had survived things that should have killed them, and they had done it together. Keth sat beside Do-hyun. Her white fur was clean now, brushed and cared for the way he had taught her. She looked healthier than she had on day 1. "What happens now?" she asked. "We go home," Do-hyun said. "Those of us who survived. We return to our worlds and our lives. And then?" Do-hyun shrugged. "I do not know. The Federation will decide if humanity passes the evaluation. They will look at my survival and judge my species." Keth shook her head. "They will not just see survival. They will see what you built, what you did. They will see that you saved us." "I did not save you," Do-hyun said. "You saved yourselves. I just showed you how." A sound came from above. Ships were descending through the clouds. Not one ship, but many. More than expected. The survivors stood and watched as the ships landed on the ice. Their engines melted the snow beneath them. Their lights cut through the gray morning like small suns. The doors opened. Federation officials stepped out. High Arbiter Vaughn was among them. His crystalline body caught the light and scattered it in 1,000 directions. The Arbiter walked toward the group of survivors. He moved slowly, studying each of them. When he reached Do-hyun, he stopped. "Human," he said. His voice was flat, but something in his crystal body flickered with emotion. You were expected to die in the first night. I know, Do-Yoon said. Instead, you are the last one standing. Do-Yoon shook his head. No, I am one of 14 still standing. I am not alone. The Arbiter looked at the other survivors. Keth with her clean fur. Tora with her sealed shell. Ven with his cracked but living crystal. Gren with his old tired eyes. And the others, aliens from many worlds, all standing together. You saved them, the Arbiter said. We saved each other. The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to face the full group of survivors. In 6,000 years of the survival evaluation, we have measured many things: strength, speed, endurance, adaptability. We have watched candidates fight and struggle and die alone. We have honored those who survived through power and skill. He paused. His crystal body flickered with colors that no one had ever seen before. Never once have we measured compassion. Never once have we considered that helping others might be a form of strength. Never once have we thought that survival could mean more than simply not dying. He looked back at Do-Yoon. The human showed us something we had forgotten. He showed us that the strongest survival strategy is not to be alone. It is to build community, to share knowledge, to lift others up. Kath stepped forward. Her translator crackled as she spoke. Hi, Arbiter. I must say something. The human did not just survive. He taught us to survive. His species carries knowledge in their blood. Thousands of generations of fighting cold, of building shelter, of refusing to die. But more than that, they carry something else. She looked at Do-Yoon. They carry kindness. They carry the belief that life is worth saving, even when it is not their own life. Tora stepped forward next. Her mandibles clicked in agreement. I have fought in 3 wars. I have killed many enemies. I thought I knew what strength was. I was wrong. True strength is not about destroying others. True strength is about protecting them. Van, the Polari, raised his cracked crystalline body. Light moved inside him like fire. The Federation has always asked, can this species survive alone? Perhaps the better question is, can this species help others survive? By that measure, humans are the strongest species I have ever seen. One by one, the other survivors spoke. They told their stories. They described how Do-Yoon had helped them, how he had taught them, how he had saved them when he could have let them die. High Arbiter Vaughn listened to everything. When the last survivor finished speaking, he stood in silence for a long time. Then he spoke. The survival evaluation of Keth 7 is complete. 14 candidates have survived. This is the highest survival rate in Federation history. He turned to face Do-Yoon directly. Human, your species came to us as provisional members. You were considered weak, soft, unsuited for the challenges of galactic life. Today you have proven us wrong. He raised his crystalline hand. By the authority of the Galactic Council, I hereby recommend that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Federation. Not because you proved you could survive alone, but because you proved that survival means nothing without others to share it with. The other officials looked shocked. Full membership was almost never granted after a single evaluation. It usually took decades, centuries, but Vaughn did not waver. This decision will be debated. It will be questioned. But I will support it with my full authority. Because today, on this frozen world, a human taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. He looked at Do-Yoon with something like respect. He taught us that the cold is not defeated by being stronger than it. The cold is defeated by sharing warmth. 3 months later, Do-Yoon returned to Earth. The news of his survival had spread across the galaxy. He was called a hero, a legend. The human who saved everyone. But he did not feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had done what needed to be done. His grandmother was waiting for him when he arrived home. She was old now, her hair white, her body bent with age. But her eyes were sharp and bright. "I heard what you did," she said. Do-hyun sat beside her. "I just built a shelter." It was nothing special. His grandmother smiled. It was the same smile she always had when she talked about the past. "That is what your grandfather said about the war," she replied. "He said he just shared his rice. But 100 people lived because of that rice." She took his hand. "Kindness is never nothing. Warmth is never small. When you share what you have with those who have nothing, you change the world. You change the galaxy, Do-hyun. You showed them what humans truly are." Do-hyun thought about Keth and Tora and Ven and the others. He thought about 14 survivors standing together on a frozen world. He thought about fire and shelter and the simple choice to help. "I just did what you taught me," he said. His grandmother nodded. "And that is why humans will always survive. Not because we are strong, not because we are fast, but because we never forget that warmth must be shared." Somewhere in the galaxy, on a dozen different worlds, the survivors of Keth 7 were telling their children the same story. Once, on a frozen world, when death was certain and hope was gone, a human built a fire. He looked at the aliens around him, creatures who had mocked his species and expected him to die. And he said 5 simple words: "Come, there is room." Those words changed everything. Those words will be remembered forever. Because in the end, survival is not about being the last one standing. It is about making sure that everyone can stand together. And that is what makes humans special. That is what makes them strong. That is what makes them human.